So here are the clues. I'm in Blackpool, I'm leaning on a lamppost, and I'm carrying a ukulele. Yes, it's a George Formby documentary. I told a mate of mine I was going to make a programme about George Formby, and he said, is that the guy with the grilling machines? Well, no, it isn't. It's the guy who was one of the biggest British comedians of all time, a massive, massive star. And I want to find out why people loved him so much, and how his memory lives on today.
Now I go window cleaning to earn an honest bob. For a nosy Parker, it's an interesting job. Now it's a job that just suits me. A window cleaner you would be if you can see what I can see. When I'm cleaning windows, la la dee, la la la, la la dee, la la dee, la dee, la dee. When I'm cleaning windows.
I've been a George Formby fan for as long as I can remember. Has Formby had an influence on my act? Well...
What happened to that nasty man so pally with the Taliban? Oh, 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 Osama bin Laden. He occasionally sends out a videotape to say he's doing great and he's full of hate. Well, if he's doing so great, then please tell me why a videotape, not a DVD. Oh, 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 Osama bin Laden. Thank you very much. Good night.
I'm starting my journey here in Blackpool, in many ways George Formby's spiritual home. It's also the place where hundreds of fans meet up every year to celebrate the man and his music. One of the brilliant things about George Formby fans is they're not like other fans. If you were a Jimi Hendrix fan, for example, you wouldn't go to a convention and take your electric guitar. If you were a Liberace fan, you wouldn't turn up with your Steinway grand piano. But almost every George Formby fan plays the ukulele. It's a completely interactive activity. The fans never tire of watching George's many comedy films, and in particular, they love to celebrate his mastery of the ukulele. George Formby was quite a massive film star. He made about 20 movies in between 1934 and 1946, and used to get about 35 grand a film, which by modern standards is about £1.5 million. So he was big time.
Bow down, everyone, here I come. Bang that timber and hit that drum. Bow down, everyone, yes, sir, I'm the Emperor of Lancashire.
Who's this gentleman flashing dough? Is he somebody we should know?
Is he somebody? Whoa, sir, I'm the Emperor of Lancashire.
A George Formby film has a certain formula to it. George plays a seemingly gormless northern lad who's still got a sort of a working class nous and a certain amount of resilience. And he meets a nice girl who's way, way out of his league, and then he meets quite a bad person. And the bad person does something bad, and George somehow manages to stop that happening. And at the end, he gets the girl.
Fancy you knowing all that.
And in between, there are various things. George does the occasional cracking one-liner.
Tell me, how long were you in your last situation?
3 years.
Yes, and why did you leave?
I was pardoned.
Get out!
In Keep Your Seats, Please, there's a bit where George has to smuggle a goat onto a bus. Apparently you can't take a goat on a bus. And of course what he does is he puts a dog mask on it. And so we get George on the bus manhandling this enormous goat that it's disguised as a dog.
Come on, what sort of a dog's that?
A rough-haired, hippy-poppy pig.
Oh, yeah.
What a peculiar smell.
Who did that?
But of course, the highlight of any George Formby film is when he picks up the ukulele and starts to sing.
It's Auntie Maggie's homemade remedy, guaranteed never to fail. That's the stuff that will do the trick. Sold at every chemist for one and a kick. Now if you've got lumbago, rheumatics or gout, or a pain in your orbitilly, don't kick up a shindy, you'll never get windy with Auntie Maggie's remedy.
To find out about George's early years, I met up with John Wally, founder member of the George Formby Society and all-round Formby mastermind. So, this is the grave.
This is it.
In loving remembrance of George Formby, comedian.
Yeah.
This is not George, is it? This is George's dad.
This is George Formby Senior. Forgotten now, except by Formby aficionados, but the great George Formby, the first George Formby, this is his grave.
And he gets the portrait.
He gets the portrait.
And so...
And there is the famous
Wow.
George Formby Jr.
He didn't even get top billing.
He didn't.
Oh, no.
40 years top of the bill, but when he dies, he's underneath there.
So, George Senior was really quite a big star, wasn't he?
Indeed he was. But George Senior's northern humour was born out of deprivation and ill health. And I'm afraid he contacted TB at a very early age.
Yeah.
But,
Well, his catchphrase, I love his catchphrase.
yes.
He used to say, I'm coughing well tonight.
Yes.
Is that right?
I'm coughing better tonight.
I'm coughing better
Yes.
tonight. Now, I love the fact that a man bases his catchphrase on his
on
own
something
illness.
that's killing him.
My dad collapsed and died in pantomime at Newcastle. He was a great fella, you know, really. I wonder how many of you older folk that's watching or in this theatre tonight remembers this song.
They put me on a horse's back to teach me how to ride. When I fell off, the riding master came to me and cried, however did you come to be a soldier? I replied, I was standing at the corner of the street. Bronchitis. I'm a bit tight tonight on chest. I could do with a strengthening bottle.
Well, he certainly was a great star. I don't think I'll ever be as good as him.
This is George Senior's date book, which is the book in which he kept a record of all his gigs.
Indeed.
He starts off in 1906, he's on £35 a week.
Now, you've worked that out, haven't you?
Well, according to the average wage, that works out at about, it would now be £14,000 a week. And in 1922, he's on £325 a week. And that is about 58 grand.
A week?
Yeah.
Not bad, is it?
Yeah. So the idea that the George Formby that we know, George Jr., came from poverty. Because I think people imagine that he was a working class northern lad, and that's not really true.
No, he wasn't. The Formby home at Hindley House, it was luxurious. There was a library. On the lounge floor were leopard skin tiger rugs, and George never knew poverty.
There's some great footage of George and his mother, Eliza, at George Senior's graveside, with our George standing more or less...
I'm afraid he's standing just where I am, looking down.
George was sent away at the age of 6 to be a jockey because George Senior didn't want his son to end up in the music hall. But a trip to the theatre with his mother, Eliza, changed everything.
They went down to London after the funeral to get over the shock, to visit relatives, and they went to the Holborn Empire, and they saw a man come on the stage impersonating Formby Senior. And George said, oh, all right, then if he can earn a living doing my father, I can. So back up to Warrington they went, and Eliza dressed George in his dad's clothes, taught him several of his father's songs from the cylinder records, went into the music room, and after 3 weeks she rehearsed him and rehearsed, because George had never seen his dad on the stage.
Oh, really?
Never. He used to kick him out and say, get back to the stables, one fool in the family's enough. So he didn't know what to do.
Anyway, I learned 2 songs off the records, 2 of my dad's songs, and a friend of his called Fred Harrison, he gave me a week's work at the place called the Hippodrome Earlstown. It's a little tin hut near Newtonley-Willers.
Formby Jr.'s performance was a carbon copy of his father's.
John Willie, come on, it's closing time, you see.
I didn't go as George Formby. I took my mother's maiden name, Hoy, because my dad's name was always been top of the bill, and I knew I wouldn't be top of the bill the first time. It'd be like that. And I didn't want the name of Formby to be small. I said, I'll use Formby when I top bills myself.
So George began in show business as his own father's tribute act.
Correct. And for 3 years, his mother was not only his mum, but his manager, writing to the managers of the northern music halls, who gave young George work out of sympathy for his father, because they respected him and loved him. But in 1924, at the Alhambra Theatre in Barnsley, 2 things happened to him that completely changed his life. Sitting in the front row was the feisty young lady called Beryl, brilliant businesswoman, brilliant dancer, professional dancer, and in the next dressing room was a man named Sam Paul, who played a ukulele, not in the show, but just to while away the time. George paid £2.10 for it, learned a few chords, and Beryl, George was smitten with her. And 6 months later they married, and that's when George Formby changed his life. She insisted that he dropped his father's clothes, insisted that he always wore evening suit when he came on with the uke at the end, insisted he put the ukulele in his act. So his act was completely different from that of his father. And from 1924 onwards, George went up and up and up with Beryl.
Although the skies be dreary and grey, promise me that you'll never stray away, my baby, baby, you're mine.
Beryl Ingham was already a successful dancer when she met George. But after they were married, she sacrificed her career to concentrate on making her husband into a star.
She was hard as nails, and it's difficult now, 70 years on, to look, to think what it was like. But I mean, in those days, show business was a male-orientated world, and she was one of the very, very few female impresarios, so she had to be very, very tough to get along, and she really didn't take any prisoners.
She did deals for him that were record breakers at that time. She was very, very good. I realised even at that stage that she was one of the great managers. She looked after her husband's career tremendously. I think maybe a little too strong in cases. But all the people that I saw dealing with her had a fear which was marvellous.
You see, I must admit, I have a soft spot for Beryl, because I know as a performer that one often uses one's manager as a kind of an excuse. So someone comes up to you and they say, oh, will you do this? And you go, yeah, that sounds great, I'll ask my manager. And then you say to your manager, actually, I don't want to do it, can you tell me?
Oh, I do.
So you get the manager to do the dirty work. And I suspect that George used Beryl like that quite a lot. It's quite handy having this very strict wife/manager, because then you've got a good excuse for saying no.
Do you care for one night of love?
Mother!
Beryl also had a reputation for, shall we say, protecting George from the attentions of other women.
Oh, what's that going to come up to?
There are stories that he was a bit of a ladies' man.
The women loved him. And all his films, he was always chased by a lovely lady. I mean, there was the story that I was told early on that Beryl wouldn't allow him to kiss any of his leading ladies.
Whenever anybody did a film with George Formby, it would go around the grapevine with the girls. If you're going to do a film with George, he'll make passes at you.
You know, you are a clever young lady.
Let's look again.
Well, let me help you. I'll hold it still.
I can manage.
Well, I won't bother then. How are we going to stop Mendy's broadcasting?
We're not going to...
And on the very, very last day, Beryl had to do some Christmas shopping. And I was in my dressing room in the lunch hour, and a knock came at the door, and George stood there, rather like a little boy, and said, I'm crazy about you, and that was all. I think Beryl appeared the next minute, but it was quite extraordinary how he couldn't resist, or couldn't resist trying, I suppose, to make it with all his leading ladies.
Isn't love a very funny thing?
Oh, you're crazy.
I know that.
But it wasn't just Beryl who made George Formby a superstar. The other magic ingredient was the ukulele.
Some like to be alone. It's no one else's business as far as I can see. But every time that I go out, the people stare at me with my little ukulele in my hand.
Sometimes when I say to people that I like George Formby, they say, oh yeah, George Formby, he's the guy with the banjo, isn't he? No, he's not the guy with the banjo, right? George Formby started playing one of these. It's a ukulele, 4 strings, tuned. Okay, not a banjo. A banjo normally has 5 strings, tuned completely differently. The reason that people think George played a banjo is if you play one of these in a large theatre, with me little ukulele in my hand, it's beautiful, but it's a little bit quiet. Now, there's a thing on a banjo, a round body called the resonator. One of these. And if you put one of these on a ukulele, same thing, with me little ukulele in my hand. Much louder, everyone can hear it, even in the cheap seats.
What's that called? This one? If you don't want the goods, don't mourn. Oh, I know that. It goes like this. Try it on this one first, sir. It's a better instrument. All right. Now here's a little motto song I'd like to sing to you.
Now the ukulele is a bit like backgammon in that it's very easy to play but very difficult to play well. So once I got the rudiments, I used to spend a lot of early hours of the morning sessions watching YouTube, finding these guys who show you how to do little George Formby techniques, little frills and fancy bits. And they're all mad fans and they just want to share what they know. This guy here is one of my favourites. This is Peter Nixon, who always starts with a lovely hello, which makes me feel very warm-hearted. And then he shares often stuff he's just learnt that week.
Going down and hitting the top string. Going down and hitting the bottom string. Coming up and hitting the bottom string.
So at this point, I'm normally sitting at home going... which the neighbours love at 2 o'clock in the morning.
Okay, so now what we're going to do is, we're going to take...
Now this guy is another one of my favourites. What he does in this one, it's a guy called John, and what he does, he slows down the solo in a George Formby song called I Can Tell It By My Horoscope. And not only does he slow it down so we can hear exactly what George is doing, but he represents it by a series of sound waves. Really.
Now here we see the first beat that I took from this point in the movie clip.
So you can actually tell the very moment that George's fingernail is touching each individual string. Stephen Sprout is a fantastic ukulele player and teacher. He's the man to ask about George's technique.
It's relentless. Yeah.
That is like watching a Rottweiler on a postman.
Yeah.
How good a ukulele player was George Formby?
He was incredible, really. He had a particular right-hand technique that he made his own. And there hasn't really been a uke player since Formby, or even before Formby, that played quite like him. A very, very good rhythm player.
Because I get quite angry at people, because he's very genial and sings silly songs, they kind of underestimate the musicianship of it. But that is unjust, isn't it?
It is really, yeah. I think the trouble is that Formby was such a successful comic performer that often his lyrics and his songs pigeonholed him, but when it came to actually playing the ukulele, he was a true sort of genius, really.
He's fast, isn't he?
Very fast, yeah.
So
if you try playing along to Leaning on a Lamppost, and it's like phenomenal. You listen to it and you think that's fast, but when you try play along to it, it's like, whoa.
Could you give us an example of that?
An example, yeah. Probably not as fast as Formby, but...
I'm going to applaud. I'm sorry.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you. I'll receive your applause.
That's fabulous, Stephen. Nowadays, the ukulele has become a very cool instrument. I went to this ukulele karaoke club to make sure the new generation of ukulele players give George the credit he deserves. I'm regarding you guys as the kind of the new wave of the ukulele players. Is that true?
I think that's fair summary.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people from the new wave don't like George Formby very much and don't play George Formby. Why is that?
Why is that? I think because we worry that means we won't get an audience, maybe, if I'm being really honest.
I have every admiration for Mr. Formby, but I'm a bit wary of the cult of George.
I think there's a place for George in the new world of the ukulele. If you listen to some George Formby solos, for example, he was one hell of a ukulele player. He wasn't just some...
The phrase that always comes up is phenomenal right hand, isn't it? Because no one does it like George.
It's a bit like being blood brothers. We should reach to us across the years. We're all joined together by the ukulele. There's no one girl I would wait for. This one I'll break any day for. I won't have to ask what she's late for. She won't leave me flat, she's not a girl like that. No, she's absolutely wonderful and marvelous and beautiful. Anyone will understand why. I'm leaning on the lamppost at the corner of the street until a certain little lady passes by. I believe my work here is done.
It's turned out nice again, hasn't it?
In schools all over the country, children have abandoned the old traditional recorder and reached for a shiny new ukulele. Sounds like an opportunity for a bit more indoctrination. Good morning. Oh, I like being called Frank Skinner, that's nice. How lovely to see you all. You all look so fabulous and nice blue tops and happy. I want to introduce you to a man who was the most famous ukulele player in the country, right? And he was called George Formby. This is George. And George was very, very famous, and you see whenever George played, he smiled as well. So I'm going to play a little George Formby song. Now, I'm a bit nervous, so if I make a mistake, be nice to me, okay? With me little ukulele in my hand, people just don't seem to understand. They say, why don't you be a scout, why don't you read a book? But I get much more pleasure when I'm playing with me I was amazed how quickly they picked it up. Fantastic. Well, I really thought that was brilliant. Well done, everybody. And now you all know who George Formby is. And not only do you know who he is, but you can play a George Formby song, and that's brilliant. So go away and tell your friends about George.
Pardon me.
Of course, there's always songs in George Formby films. George somehow acquires a ukulele or has one with him, and then the song has to emerge from the normal action. And there's lots of different ways of doing this. I think one of my favourites is when George is strolling through a store, and there's a woman trying to work out exactly what a ukulele is, because she's thinking of buying one for a child. And who should be passing but George Formby?
All right. Nonsense. Listen.
No, see, it's not quite right. Do you mind? I'll show you. Come on and hear my ukulele. Come on and hear, come on and hear. I give a demonstration daily. Right over here, right over here.
And it goes into a fabulous song sequence in which what I love about it is George is so persistently George that he does the normal saucy lines, even though he's surrounded by a posse of smiling, innocent children. It's a fabulous juxtaposition.
When I go out with my little black case, some people get me wrong. A nice young lady said to me, I'm glad you came along. I'd like to see your underwear, please show me all you can. I said, you won't see none of mine, I'm the ukulele man.
He's the ukulele man. He's the ukulele man.
I'm not a salesman, you can guess, but I sell something nonetheless. So come and buy some happiness from the ukulele man.
What I really like about the ukulele solos in George Formby movies is that George, if you watch his face, it looks like he can hardly believe he's playing this solo either. So he's banging away and going... And it really, it's the joy of the man. It's like he's been given this gift from God. Most George Formby films end with a chase, and this can be George in a car, George on a racehorse, George on a motorbike, but the general motif is that George is terrified, and consequently he makes a lot of fabulously high-pitched Lancastrian noises throughout, and the variety that he manages to find in this, the occasional mother or ooek, it's really is something.
Make life go with the swing, laugh at trouble and sing, tra la 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 la, count your blessings and smile.
It was during the war that Formby's cheeky optimism and relentlessly cheerful songs really captivated the nation.
Now he makes raw recruits just tremble in their boots. He calls them slackers who's gone crackers. Our sergeant major, his feet fell off the road, knock-kneed and pigeon-toed. We'd sooner shoot him than salute him. Our sergeant major.
George, of course, was a highly patriotic comic and a very big part of the British war effort. And in Let George Do It, there is one sequence which apparently always got a standing ovation and massive cheers and applause from the crowd. I think you'll probably be able to guess why.
Look out, Donald! I'm coming up here! I'm determined on self-determination! I wipe the British Empire from the face of the earth! Realize, I want my last territorial demand in Europe.
British Schweinehund for that I knock your head off on the block!
Haha, not if I knock you a block off first.
Well, I, like everybody else, I was called up and I went to take my medical. That was the biggest laugh I ever got in my life. When I stripped off, I never knew I had flat feet. And the doctor looked at me and he gave me a shilling and he gave me a card which said grade 4. I didn't even get in the first 3. And he said, you better go entertaining troops. So I went over every war front. I took Beryl with me, of course, and we went everywhere.
Wherever George had to go, Beryl had to go too. I just used to say all the time, if you want George, you've got to have me. And they always wanted George, so they had to put up with me.
Now it's turned out nice again. He does look a swank, does Frank on his tank. He does look a swank, does Frank. See him dashing along with the click-a-tick, click-a-tick-clang. Oh, Mr. Woo, what shall I do? I'm feeling kind of Limehouse Chinese laundry blues. Bless 'em all, the long and the short and the tall. Out in the Middle East, you can have a lot of fun. Out in the Middle East, by the Mediterranean.
Amazingly, George Formby's songs are still keeping up morale in the front line, with a branch of the fan club out in Afghanistan.
I can't believe all these young guys had any interest in it at all. What can you explain it?
It's catchy. As you know, it's just a ukulele and the songs, and then it's actually quite funny. Some of the lyrics, like Mr. Woo and things like that. It's just that kind of catchy tune. Because that's all pop music is. It's just very catchy stuff.
Were you a George Formby fan before?
Hand on heart, I'd never even heard of George Formby before I went to Afghanistan. It wasn't, I don't think any of us had, until one of the lads, Lee Greenhill, came out. And he was just listening there, and everyone was like, what's he listening to? What's that all about? And all of a sudden, there I was writing to the George Formby Society, starting the Afghanistan branch.
I mean, do you think he was good for morale in Afghanistan?
Yeah, it certainly was. When we went back to Camp Bastion, which is the focal point of Helmand, to fly home for rest and recuperation, we'd sit there outside and play Formby, because it was natural for us, because we were, for most of the tour, we were in the middle of nowhere on top of this hill, so we could do as we pleased, and we were sat there just like Mr. Woo and just singing away. People would be walking by going, what are they on?
George was awarded the OBE for his work entertaining the troops, and after the war he and Beryl set out on a tour of the Commonwealth. They were treated like royalty everywhere they went, like here in South Africa.
They were invited to South Africa, George and Beryl, and they were told that they would have to sing to segregated audiences. Neither of them claimed to have known what apartheid was. I think it was just starting then.
Yeah, this would be, 46, and I think apartheid started in 48, so it was obviously, it was on the way.
It was on its way there. It hadn't actually started. And he didn't know what segregated meant, and they explained to him black on one side and white on the other, and his argument was, well, when I peel spuds, if I peel red spuds and white spuds, they're still the same colour spuds inside, that kind of thing. They were on stage in Johannesburg, and this little black girl walked onto the stage with a bunch of flowers, and as anybody would, Beryl picked her up and gave her a kiss. And they were escorted out of the theatre by armed guards and said they had to leave the country. And she said, well, I'm not going to do that. So what they did, she cancelled all the concerts and she sang to black audiences only. And they became heroes.
George and Beryl's flouting of the rules attracted the attention of Daniel Malan, the head of the National Party.
Eventually they were arrested in the hotel. And they actually kicked the door down and went in and said to Beryl, you're leaving, and he called her all kinds of names, and Malan walked in and she just slapped him across the face and said, piss off, you horrible little man. And they were escorted to the airport there was no two ways about it then, they were escorted to the airport from the hotel. And the man who had arranged all the gigs in the township was shot dead as they were getting on the plane. I mean, it was really a horrible experience. Yeah.
This is the Imperial Hotel Blackpool, which is where the George Formby Society has their convention. And if you have any interest in George Formby at all, this is where you come to worship. And I am one of those pilgrims, so I think I'm going to find out a great deal about George, and I'll probably play a little bit of ukulele as well. I'm looking forward to it.
They laughed, oh, when I started to play, they laughed so hearty.
In a reckless moment, I'd promised to play on stage tomorrow, so I thought I'd better go and check out the competition.
They cheer me, and when the ball gets near me, to show how far a brave man can go, with the bull I dance a tango.
I'm leaning on a lamp. Maybe you think I look a tramp, or you may think I'm hanging round to steal a car. But no, I'm not a crook.
So, about 3 years ago, I went to a branch meeting of the George Formby Society in Barnsley, and somebody said to me, "Are you going to play a song?" And I said, "Well, I've got a slight problem because I can't play the ukulele." And they said, "Oh, you should talk to Andy Eastwood." So this is Andy Eastwood, and you said, "Oh, I'll teach you in about 40 minutes."
We had a little session, and I thought you did very well.
So you actually studied music at Oxford?
I did.
And your specialist instrument was the ukulele?
I did my recital on the ukulele, and it was the first time anyone had done that. So it was quite an event.
Presumably they were used to people playing classical piano and violin.
They were expecting classical recitals, yeah.
Yeah.
Which is good because no one's studied Formby's music at all, seriously.
Yeah.
Really.
No, well, it's not taken very seriously, is it?
Well, it's not supposed to be, is it? I mean, he was a comedian. He didn't want to be taken seriously, did
But he was a good player, wasn't he?
He was a brilliant player, and one of the things about the way he did it was he made it look so easy and simple. I mean, as a comic, he didn't want anyone to think he was clever. It was that character he played off stage as well as on.
I'm very grateful to you because without you I don't think I'd have ever started playing.
Really?
And I get
great.
a lot of joy out of playing. Even though I'm not very good, I love to play.
Great.
So thanks, Andy, I appreciate it.
Cheers.
Now, I'm quite desperate to improve my ukulele skills, so this is called an improver's class. It's run by a bloke called Andy Little, and I'm hoping to improve. Andy, how are you?
Come and join us.
Thank you very much. All right, Charlie?
Most people who pick up a ukulele want to play like George Formby. He's just an absolute genius, there's no question. If you look at a George Formby solo, the split stroke is actually going on continuously throughout the solo. If you can't do this split stroke, you're never ever going to sound like George Formby. So it is the absolute bedrock of what we're trying to achieve. If you go down, okay, get that sound in your head, okay, just do that. You're not going to be able to do it now. It is mind-bogglingly difficult.
I don't know, am I doing it right?
Now to me, that sounds like, 3 seconds of George Formby.
Well, that's a start,
yes,
isn't it?
Don't you think?
It's a start.
Frank, do you think that you can sort of take all this information with you, get on the stage and have a go yourself?
I'm now on the verge where I'm going into, I think, as far as the George Formby Society is concerned, what you call the Class A drugs of playing ukulele, and that is the solos. Because everyone I've spoken to here so far, I think they fast forward through the rest of it. It's the solos they're after.
You can't wait to get to the solo.
And I'm at that point now where I'm in the dark labyrinth of the solo. I need somebody with a torch walking ahead of me, basically. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
See me dressed like all the sports, in me blazer and a pair of shorts, with me little stick of Blackpool rock. Along the promenade I stroll. It may be sticky, but I never complain. It's nice to have a nibble at it now and again.
George Formby was obviously tuned in to the comic potential of Blackpool rock. Hold on a minute. Could this be a way of ingratiating myself with the George Formby Society?
The rock's very simple ingredients. Sugar, just like you put in your tea or your coffee. And the other main ingredient is glucose syrup. The rock's cooled on these tables. Okay. You have to cool it down before you can start working with it. We put it on another machine which aerates it, and that makes it go white in the centre.
You know, you could put that in an art gallery in London and people would pay to watch it.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, you should try it.
With me little stick of Blackpool rock.
What we're going to do, we're going to put the word George Formby through the rock.
Can I just say, one of the great mysteries of my childhood was how you got the words to go right through a stick of rock. I'm about to just find that out now.
You're about to find that out. And we'd like you to help us by making the F.
I'm happy to make the F.
You're happy to try and make the F? Right.
Okay.
Here's your letter F.
Oh, I see. So hold on, so that's what the letter F is.
That is the letter F in the rock, yeah? Right, Frank, we put your F into the right place.
Where does the F go? Hurry up, it's getting off.
You're now the man who put the F in Formby. Now you can see that's the white rock out of the pulling machine, and that's going to end up being the centre of the rock. Now here's your bar of rock being put together. You see we've got the centre core of it.
Yeah.
We've got the word George at the top, Formby at the bottom, yeah? That's going to go in the middle on that red piece, okay. Yeah? And the red piece is going to be pulled round it. And that, sir, is your large bar of George Formby rock. And in a minute we're going to start pulling it out into the right thickness for the finished product.
So I'm in a rock factory in Blackpool and I've got a ukulele. It's got to be done. With me little stick of Blackpool rock, down the promenade I stroll. It might get sticky but I never complain. It's nice to have a nibble at it now and again. Every day, wherever I stray, the kids all round me flock. One day the band conductor, he was up on his stand. Somehow dropped his baton, it flew out of his hand. I jumped in his place and I conducted the band with me little stick of Blackpool rock. Ooh, mother. One thing that it's hard to avoid with George Formby songs is there are double entendre, sort of sexual innuendo all over the place, which you have to try and identify. Some of them are very clever. There's a lovely one in one of his early songs where a woman gives him a pocket watch, and when he opens it, it's just an empty shell. And he said, well, what's the good of this? And she says, I'll give you the works tomorrow night. Then again, in my little ukulele, when his child is born towards the end, George goes off to the bedroom, and there is the child. And my heart it jumped with joy, I could see it was a boy, 'cause he had his ukulele in his hand. Oh baby! Again, it's unlikely that a newborn child would actually have a musical instrument. You can get so innuendoed with George that you start seeing them everywhere. I've got here, for example, In a Little Wigan Garden, which on the surface seems like a song slightly about urban decay, about being in a garden, but because it's Wigan, it's not as nice as gardens can be. But after a while, I start seeing sexuality and strangeness everywhere. So it goes, neath the Wigan water lilies, where the drain pipe overflows, there's my girl and me, she'll sit on my knee and watch how the rhubarb grows. Is it George or is it me?
Oh, I'm going to faint.
When the morning mildew christens our shallots. In the end, I'm lost.
Well, it means you've seen it, they'll know.
Baby, baby, you're my...
George and Beryl saw out their final years here at Lytham St Anne's, a couple of miles from Blackpool. The house, like all their other houses, was called Beraldine.
A couple of very sad events took place at Beraldine.
What were they?
Well, on Christmas Day, 1960, Beryl died in her bedroom at this house, and she was 59, and she died of cancer. And 8 days before that, she propped herself up in bed with George's manservant Harry Scott attending her, put on her makeup and her fur, because she wanted to look at her best for George, because he was appearing on BBC television in a one-man show.
Turned out nice again, hasn't it? Well, it may have done for me, but I don't know about you, because you've got to stick me for the next 35 minutes or more, because we've no girls, no dancers, no acrobats, no conjurers, not even a guest star, only me and the uke. But I'm going to tell you a few home truths I've never told in public before.
It really was a confession show, in which he confessed that he regretted not having any children, that Beryl had been responsible for his success.
You see, I married Beryl, and then she knew a man in Newcastle called Thomas F. Convery. He used to run reviews. He gave me a week's work up there, and he liked my act. I don't know why, but he liked it. And he gave me a review contract for 5 years. Well, I never looked back after that. And I shall always be grateful to Beryl for doing all the business for me, you see.
He regretted not being able to read and write properly. He praised the public for making him into a star, because he never understood why he was a star.
I mean, what do? We don't do anything. We don't become stars. You people make us stars. We wouldn't be any good without you. And any of our present stars today, if they ever believe anything different, they're crazy. I shall always be grateful to the public for what they've done for me.
And then 8 days later, she died.
It must have been incredibly difficult for George, though, doing that show, knowing that Beryl was dying, basically.
Well, she was dying not only of leukemia, but also of alcohol. And there she was, watching George, and he must have put on a very brave face.
It's classic showbiz stuff, though, isn't it? The show must go on. George's fans were shocked when, just 6 weeks after Beryl died, he got engaged to school teacher Pat Howson, 20 years his junior.
If we'd have kept it quiet and gone on secretly, it wouldn't have been nice. I'll be perfectly honest, I've got to have somebody to look after me. I mean, with what I've got, you've got to put something on your plate, you know.
But it was never to be. 2 days before their planned wedding, George suffered a heart attack and died. Over 100,000 people lined the streets of Warrington for his funeral.
And when the will was published, oh my goodness, I can see the headlines now, you know, Formby cuts out family from will. Miss Pat inherits £185,000. And the only thing that he left was £5,000 to his valet, Harry Scott, but most of his fortune he left to Pat. The solicitor, John Crowther, who was the executor of the will, insisted that all Beryl and George's possessions were to be auctioned, and then they'd deal with the will later. So for 3 days, the public were allowed to view all the possessions, and it was horrible, you know, people rummaging around Beryl's underclothes, and even the number plate off George's Bentley fetched £1,000. And just look at this for intimate items on page 34. It says, the deceased's personal clothing, much of which is new and unworn, 14 various shirts, and a box of various coat hangers.
What about this? 4 shirts, 3 vests, 2 pairs of underpants, pair of socks and dressing gown, all used or soiled.
I know.
Oh,
Isn't that sad?
It's just wrong. I must say I like the idea of the father and the son buried together. It's very sad, though. The father dies age 45 and the son 56. It's nothing, is it?
I'm following me father's footsteps, I'm following me dear old dad. He's up front with a big fine gal, so I thought I'd have one as well. I don't know where he's going, but when he gets there I'll be glad. I'm following me father's footsteps, yes, I'm following me dear old dad.
Just after he died, a group of fans got together to form the George Formby Society to keep the memory of George and his music alive. The highlight of every George Formby meeting is the thrash, when everybody gets up on stage and shares a mass ukulele experience. I don't think I really understood the George Formby Society until I did the thrash. And when I was in the midst of the thrash, I think then it came to me, I knew what it was all about.
It's a wonderful feeling, isn't it? It doesn't matter whether you can play or whether you're not. You just carry it along with the enthusiasm of it.
And you just look along the line, all those arms going at the same time. It was a real thing of beauty, I thought. And I love the fact that it's an active thing, that people play the ukulele, they don't just listen to George playing it.
But you see, George was a happy-go-lucky fellow, wasn't he? His whole manner was joy and fun. And I mean, to my mind, you cannot be miserable when you've got a uke in your hand.
I'll be honest, when I came here I thought everyone would have white hair, right?
Yeah.
But in fact, there's children, teenagers. Can you explain why that appeal is still there?
It's an enigma, isn't it?
It is.
It's the attraction of the ukulele. It's that unique sound. There's no other instrument sounds like that. That's the attraction of it.
I'm really not allowed to set the car around the streets in case a certain little lady comes by.
When I was a child, his songs were so descriptive. Everybody else was singing songs about love and moaning Joan, and George would tell you a story. It was like reading a comic set to music.
Levi's monkey Mike, what a funny creature. He went into the church one day and bit the local preacher.
There's an animation based on the George Formby song, Levi's Monkey Mike.
That's right.
Where did that come from?
That's a young man who was doing a thesis at university, doing a degree in animation, and he must have been attracted to George Formby. But when you watch the animation, Levi's Monkey Mike, and listen to the words, it really all makes sense.
Now once we had the parliament, but it would never go, so they filled it up with animals out of the Wilby show. The lion was prime minister, the swanky was disposed. They wanted the Lord Chancellor, so somebody proposed Levi's monkey like, and he proved quite a good un. He taxed the laces in our boots and cracked our Christmas pudding. Now working man, just give a fear, we're all right now, so never fear. Who's going to take the tax of beer? Levi's monkey Mike.
We've got a wonderful concert going on this afternoon, and we've got a special guest star that's going to come and entertain you. And that guest star is Mr. Frank Skinner.
That's the one you want to turn off. Good afternoon, everyone. Can I say I'm absolutely terrified. So I'm apologising in advance, basically. I've just bought this in the room next door, 950 quid. I know. And you're about to see it physically and mentally abused. If there is a solo, it'll be an accident. As good as it gets. No, I know I'm not handsome, I've no good looks or wealth, and the girls I chase say my plain face will compromise their health. But I see fellas worse than me, bow-legged and boss-eyed, walking out with lovely women clinging to their side. And if women like them, like men like those, why don't women like me? Look at Empress Josephine, most attractive woman that was ever seen. But Napoleon, short and fat, captivates a lovely looking dame like that. Well, if women like them, like men like those, why don't women like me? Hey, hey, why don't women like me? Nearly a solo.
Oh, heck.
If women like them, like men like those, why don't women like me? Take Lord Nelson with one limb, Lady William Hamilton, she fell for him. With one eye and one arm gone west, she run like the devil and she grabbed the rest. Oh, if women like them, like men like those, why don't women like me? Hey, hey, why don't women like me?
Well, I wouldn't go so far as to say it turned out nice again, but I think I just about got away with it.
Come and get your rock here.
I think it's pretty clear that George Formby was a massive star because everybody loves what seems to be an ordinary working class chap who triumphs over adversity. The reason I think he'll continue to be popular is because of these. Everyone I've spoken to, that's what really touches them. And people want to play like him. He was a great player. And as long as ukuleles exist, people will come to George Formby conventions and watch those solos, every little move of the finger, every little twitch of the wrist, and they want to play like that. And that will keep George Formby's memory alive forever.
Stay with us here on BBC4. Brand new drama coming up next with part 1 of The Slap.